so today I want to talk about the West Memphis 3 case. Probably of all the cases that I've looked at, I mean, they're all horrible, but this one's up to the very, very, very top. So let's just get into it. Background of the case. I imagine everybody's here watching because they already know something about the case, so I don't want to be redundant. I hate that, but I'm just going to give a little brief synopsis. On May 5th, 1993, three 8-year-old kids, Chris Byers, Stevie Branch, and Michael Moore, went missing. They were in 2nd grade at the time. They were supposed to be at home at various times before supper, it appears, and they did not show. Now, let me preface this by telling you, and it doesn't matter how many times I tell you, these people will still comment stupid shit. I'm not an expert on this case. I don't know every single detail about this case. Much like the Summer Wells case, I'm not infatuated with these cases. Therefore, I don't know every single detail. So don't get on there and start telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about because I don't know that what size shoe the kid was wearing. Okay, I'm not investigating this. If I was investigating it, I would know his entire background. I would know what kind of bubble gum he chewed, what kind of ice cream he liked. I would know every single thing there is to know about him, his family, the area, and anything else about it. With that said, I'm not, okay? I'm not investigating it. What I am doing is giving my initial impressions of the case. That means that could change depending upon what more research that I have done. I have done limited research in this, mainly, like I do the others, the crime scene. That is really my forte, and that's what I give my opinion on. This one I dug a little bit deeper, but, there's just so much out there. And just like any big popular case, there's so much out there. Half of it, if not 3/4 of it, is not true. And the quarter that is true is debated. So, just like any case, it can be debated a million different ways. Experts look at the same piece of evidence and see 2 different things. Happens all the time. So, that's the background of the case. These kids went missing and they were found dead the next day in a drainage ditch that was in a wooded area called Robin Hills. And I initially got turned on to this case through another Joe Berlinger production, Paradise Lost, on HBO. I'd watched that a long time ago, and I watched it again recently to refresh myself. Now, I'm smart enough to know that all documentaries, just like all books and just about anything else, is biased. So you cannot just go off of one source, one documentary, or anything like that, because it's skewed. In Paradise Lost, obviously, it's skewed towards the innocence of the 3 individuals from West Memphis that was arrested. So, I did watch it to get familiarized. I made sure that I was not being biased. Anything that stuck out to me, much like reading police reports, I would write down, then I would research it. So at the end of this, I got some stuff that I have written down because it was important to me, just like I said, when I do a regular cold case and I look at the police reports. So that's the background of the case. Victimology. So you have 3 victims, all 8-year-olds, 2nd graders, friends. That's important. They were friends. They hung out together. They were all from a low social economic background. One or 2 of them may have been abused, or at least corporal punishment done at home. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying based off of the autopsy reports that I read, that's what the conclusion that I came up with. they were low-risk victims. And we all know I've gone through about a high-risk prostitute, low-risk a child. Although I think these individuals, they were low-risk victims, but it was elevated slightly because they were in second grade and they were unsupervised riding bikes around town. Now, back in 1993, I was in the Marine Corps. I was 1 year in the Marine Corps, but I don't know if my parents would allow me to ride bike in second grade around all that heavy traffic and stuff, far away from the house. Doesn't matter, I guess. I shouldn't be comparing the two, but I don't like that fact that they were riding around by themselves. Not by themselves, they were in a group, but that has no bearing. They were still a low risk for being victimized in a homicide, which made it even more low risk is that they were in a group. Okay, if they were singular, I would expect maybe that they are more apt to be a victim. I don't know the demographics of West Memphis that well. The quick research that I did, it did seem like it was a very low socioeconomic area. A lot of trailers. Not that that's bad that anybody's living in a trailer. I'm not saying that, but maybe they can't afford to buy a regular house and they lived in trailer parks. So those are the three victims. The crime scene. A wooded area off of an interstate, but behind looked like a truck stop car wash of some sort. That's where the boys were found. The boys were found hogtied, which is left wrist to left ankle, right wrist to right ankle. And they were naked. And they were face down in this drainage ditch. Two of them had bikes that they had rode to that area. Some will say that they were murdered elsewhere and dumped there. And this is important to try to figure out if it was dumped or if the murder occurred there. So that's how they were found. Their clothing was also found in this drainage ditch. At least one portion, one of the boys' shirts was wrapped around a stick and stuck into the bottom of the creek into the mud in order to conceal it, just like the boys were concealed. It seems that some of the clothes may have been missing. The socks, the underwear, some of the socks. One of the socks was found inside one of the boys' shoe. That's how the discovery was made. They were reported missing. They didn't come home when they were supposed to. The next morning, people had searched at night for them, as you would. And in the morning, the search continued, and a juvenile probation officer got out. He was searching that area, and he found a shoe floating in the drainage ditch, creek area. One of the police officers that was there with the juvenile probation officer got in. Actually, I think he fell in when he tried to get the shoe. And he stated to the juvenile probation officer, according to the probation officer, I feel something with my leg, like a log or something. When he fell backwards, his leg came up, and up came the body of one of the little boys. So, autopsy's done. It's determined that the boys were beaten. A knife was used. One of the boys' penises, or the skin around his penis, was removed. And they were beaten to death with sticks. They had fractured skulls. And the time of death is placed around 6:30 at night to 7:30, 7:45. So that timeline is also based off of the last people to see them. two different witnesses that I saw that last saw them. One witness stated he saw them up near where they were murdered, and another witness said they saw them actually by one of the kids' houses, Stevie Branch's houses. Now that didn't come out till years later. So initially, they're going off of what was told that they were seen up by Round Hills. So basically, what happens is, to the police, it's my opinion, and I believe it's a fact, that they believe that this had satanic ritual written on it. And they believe that, I think, because of the odd crime scene. The bindings, the fact that one of the boys' penises appeared to be removed, looked like there was bites on the victims. And let's face it, 3 boys, 8-year-olds found naked. Come on, I mean, you have to try to put some sense into it. Who would do this? And I think the satanic ritual, satanic overtones is what they went with. They go to probation, which a lot of times police officers do. I've done that in drug cases. Hey, we got a case up here. Is there anybody up there that you know, used to deal, used to use? Yeah, this person. So I believe this. They go and ask, hey, do you have anybody on probation that has any demonology, witchcraft, satanic cult? One of the probation officers says, yes, I got a guy named Damien Eccles, and, I think he is into Satanism. That started, okay, you're right here at the investigation, okay? You have a crime scene, you have victimology, you have victims, and now all of a sudden, you have suspect. So you're starting to go this way. You're not staying on the course. Okay? Yes, you have suspects, you're going to veer off. But in this case, it appears that maybe the focus now is going to Damien. There's nothing wrong with that. You have to, if you believe in your mind that this is a satanic cult and this guy is involved in a satanic cult, you are naturally going to take your investigation that way. They did. They find out that he was with his friend Jason Baldwin. Jason Baldwin, okay, let's go into a little bit of suspectology on these guys. Let's look at their background. Damien was into some witchcraft, some Wicca, wore a trench coat, carried a staff, a big stick that could also be used as a murder weapon because these kids were beaten with something besides fists. He had dropped out of school. He had some mental health issues. All these things are facts. Okay? They can be looked up. My research, after I watched these documentaries, my research doesn't go to opinionated websites. They go to court documents, trial transcripts, those notarized statements. Those are things that I look at. So these things about Damien are fact. Now, Damien's supporters can try to dispute this all they want. But that's the fact. Jason Baldwin hung out with Damien. Jason was, I believe, 15 years old, and they were best friends. If I could compare them to people from afar, I would say Columbine, just because of the way they were dressed. Dylan Harris and, or Eric Harris and Dylan Claypool, I believe their names. Best friends that liked different type of music, dressed in black. Shit, that was me, okay? I was Jason Baldwin. I liked AC/DC, Guns N' Roses, Metallica. When I was that age, and I dressed in black. I played sports too, but I had long hair. I had earrings. I partied. I, drank alcohol when I was in high school. Okay, you're not gonna accuse me of being a murderer of 3 boys just because of the way I dressed. But when I watched Jason and his mannerisms and stuff, he did honestly remind me a lot of me. So, especially the hair, when I had hair, it was, all business up front and a party in the back. That's the way my hair was as well. So, investigators start focusing in that direction for good reason. Naturally, you're going to have to interview them, get an alibi. They're given polygraphs, at least Damon. I'm not sure. I don't believe Jason was. Damon failed it. You already know how I feel about polygraphs, so it doesn't matter. But he made some statements in there that could kind of be construed. If you are looking for a suspect, it would certainly not take you off of him. Damien was a smartass. It was obvious he did not like police. And he was a smartass at trial. And I think he was a smartass in general. But he was also intelligent. So, third person becomes involved. Now you have Jason Baldwin and you have Damien Echols. To everybody that was interviewed, Jason would listen to Damien. It seemed like he followed Damien. Leadership following is going to be very important in my assessment of this. So they want to try to get more information off Damien. Get him to confess, see what he knows, talk to him. So they enlisted the help of a female. I believe her name is Vicky. Vicky is friends with an individual named Jesse Miss Kelly. They interview Jesse, and Jesse's, after a while, comes around and confesses that he, Damien, and Jason killed these kids in those woods. Now, we'll get into that confession later. It's a hugely debated topic. And based off of that confession, and not much else, I'll have to admit, they arrested all three. Now, they did find a knife in the back of Jason's trailer park home in a lake. They had called the prosecution had called the press there and said they were going to find something. They had known supposedly that there was a knife in that lake, and they sent scuba divers in there and they found it. Now, how did they know that it was in there? Apparently, that Jason's mom had told them that they had threw a knife in there. But the timing of it is debated. I will debunk that knife myth later. But Jason's mom said it was months or years previous to the murders that they discarded this knife. They get arrested. They get convicted at trial. At trial, the medical examiner testifies someone used pristine, handiwork, much like Jack the Ripper or the Black Dahlia, to mutilate one of the little boys' skin around his penis. Also said that there was bite marks. The jury finds all this evidence credible, and they find the three teenagers guilty. Damien Echols is sentenced to death, the other two life in prison. Now, I pretty much went over the evidence that they had against these guys. It relied on a lot about testimony about satanic rituals and satanic cult, and everyone believed this was a sacrifice. So, we'll fast forward from 1994, I believe, when they were arrested and convicted, to about 2000, early 2000s, and Damien's appeal. He maintains his innocence. So they find some evidence that gets tested for DNA. As you know, back in '93, DNA was not relevant. I mean, if it was, you would needed a quarter-size drop at least of blood or semen. You didn't have that, obviously, here. In fact, at the crime scene, there was no blood. So they thought. What some people don't know is that luminol tests was done at that crime scene and did show blood. This was not presented at trial because luminol, I believe at the time, they thought that it wasn't good enough evidence. Luminol will react to some cleaning agents like bleach. So you got to be careful with that. But this is an outside environment. In a drainage ditch on the banks, there's not going to be bleach out there, folks. Okay, and there's no cleaning agent. That was blood. So back, we go to 2007-ish. Appeals say, hey, we need to test these ligatures and other stuff for DNA now because advances in technology. So they do, what do? They find a hair, a single strand of hair, from what I seen on the lab report, that was in the knot of one of the bindings of the kids. It did not match Damien, Jesse, or Jason. This starts a chain of events of them being released. They are eventually released. They took an Alford plea, which they maintained their innocence while pleading guilty. And what they're basically saying is, hey, the state has enough evidence to convict us. Obviously, they did, because they were. And if the judge were to grant a new trial, that might be what happened. But we are innocent. Jason, who I believe is the smartest of the three, first of all, he never testifies, unlike Damon. Damien testifies because I believe he thinks he's the smartest person in the room. And also because he believes, he knows that he didn't do this. Jason says nothing. No emotion, no outburst, just lets it play out. When they're pleading guilty with these Alford pleas, I find it kind of funny how Jesse and Damien read their statements saying, it's in our best interest to plead guilty. When it gets to Jason, he says, I believe it is in the state's best interest for me to plead guilty. Big grudge that he held, and if he's innocent, well-deserved grudge. They get let out. So now let's start the investigation, okay? Now we know what happened. We already did victimology, crime scene. What did that crime scene tell me? Here, we're 23 minutes in, and I'm just getting to the good stuff, right? What the crime scene tells me is that they were killed there. Now, this will go against some of the other individuals that I know that looked at the case. Brent Turvey, who is a controversial criminal profiler. I don't know personally of one FBI profiler that likes him. I know I've had discussions with Richard Walter, profiler from VDOC. I have seen interaction of not so good nature between an FBI profiler named, I want to say Mike McGarry. I'm not sure, so I better not even state it. But he doesn't seem to be well liked. I've read a few of his books, textbooks, and it's my opinion that he is very good at what he does. With that being said, I would go against him in his assessment of this, where he says that this was just a dump site and the kids were killed elsewhere. From what I see, I don't believe that. And I think the luminol test will back that up. we covered the socks and the underwear missing. What I want to look at, when I was looking at this, a couple of things stood out to me. The clothing that was found of the kids. 2 of their pants or shorts were inside out, and 1 was not. That's important to me. The knots on the binding being hogtied is not that common. I shouldn't say it's not that common. I have not seen it that much in murder. Robberies and stuff, sometimes yes. Sexual fantasies, yes. Very strange here. But the knots told me something. What did the knots tell me? Well, so I'm trying to see if I should get to that yet. No, I won't. I'm going to save that for a little bit. I want to talk about Jesse's confession. Okay? People say, why would he confess to something that he didn't do? I would never do it. I'm not going to say that his IQ places him near retardation level. I won't demean him like that. I would say that he's of low mentality, and you can tell that just by talking to him. I don't need a standardized test to tell me this. You can tell by his interviews, the way he's talking. But I read the confession, and I listened to the confession, and it's my opinion that it was a false story, a false confession. Now, people might get up in arms about that. I don't really care. That's my opinion. I could see how the police would, just like an attorney does on the stand. They lead you, and they're not supposed to, but they do. They'll ask you a question that leads you to an answer. Now, this topic, I am sure, is covered a million times, and I don't want to go over. But as a layman, I want to be able to explain it to you. If I want you to say that you picked up that knife, I won't ask you, did you pick something up? I will say to you, well, did you pick up the knife? Yes. It leads you to the answer that you want. There is no question in my mind that this was what the police did. Am I saying it's bad? No. They thought that they had their guy, and he is of low mentality. They are speaking to him as if he is a kid almost, and you have to kind of lead him so you don't just get yes, answers. Very dangerous if the person is not guilty, because it will surely look like he's guilty and giving guilty answers. He is giving them what they want to hear because he wants to go home. Now, there's debate whether he was there for 12 hours. That's the big thing. Listen, interrogation is interrogation. You can keep them there as long as you want. But you have to ask the questions without leading. I know that's tough when you're dealing and you're asking questions of somebody that's kind of mentally slow. He didn't confess just one time, guys. He confessed like 5 different times to different people. He actually, some people might not know this, he confessed to transportation officers from the sheriff's department when they were taking him after the conviction, taking him home. Or not home, I'm sorry, to his home for the next 18 years, which is the penitentiary. He confessed again. And they gave a report stating that. Now, so if he confessed 5 times, he even confessed to his own attorney, should you believe him? Well, let's look at the confession. He got a lot of things wrong. Basic things. Things that, there were some things where, was there 5 stab wounds or 6? If he says there was 8 and there was only 5, I can let that slide, right? But when they say, when did the crime occur? When did you kill them? When you say noon, 12 o'clock, and it surely didn't happen until 6 at night, and the kids were in school, so they couldn't even be there, that is a huge red flag. The police knew it because they would come back to it. I got a little problem with your time frame here, Jesse. Okay? Saying that they were raped. The only indication that they were raped was the victims' anuses were dilated. Well, that medical examiner should know that that happens to everybody. That's going to happen to you when you die. Okay? That's natural. If I know this, a medical examiner should know this. And if he doesn't know it, he should have prepared himself at court to be able to testify to that. That was a huge mistake. Jesse, in his confession, says that he saw Damien rape the boys. He used the word screw. He also said Jason did the same thing. There's no evidence of that. Not only was there no evidence of that, there was no evidence of a stabbing. I don't get this. When I started looking at the case to begin with, I've always heard that they were stabbed. I saw nothing. Okay, there was no stab wounds. What I saw is what I believe experts saw later was predatory animal bites on the victims. I'm shocked at trial that they introduced the murder weapon that they found. And this is something else that Jesse got wrong in his confession. He said that they used a folding knife. It was a hunting Bowie knife, like a Rambo knife that they found in the lake. And it had serrated teeth. They're saying the stab wounds, the knife wounds, are scrapes. Much like you would take a serrated knife and do that, or scrape like that, and it left those serrated marks. Are you freaking kidding me? If you have a knife, you're going to plunge it in somebody if you're going to kill them. You're telling me that you're going to sit there and scrape their backs? That's the most asinine thing I've ever heard. And how they took that to trial. And people believe that. I must be missing something, guys. I have to be. Because that makes no sense. So anyhow, that's one of the things that convicted them. It's later determined, I mean, I can see it plain as day. There's no stab wounds. Their shirts have no stab wounds. There's no defensive stab wounds. Okay? These are turtle bites. Plain as day. So the state got that wrong. Whether those three are guilty or not, hey, I don't know. I'm just telling you, the state got that part wrong. I already went through why they were arrested. Should they have been arrested? No. My opinion is no. I don't believe there was enough evidence for them to be arrested. You have one witness that puts Damien near the crime scene, walking, dirty, with another person. They couldn't tell whether it was his girlfriend or Jason because they both had similar builds and similar hair. That's it. I'm sitting here trying to rack my brain. Why else? I can't think of anything. I mean, they maybe didn't have solid alibis, but nobody ever has a solid alibi unless you're at work and you punch in. Even if you're at work and it's a work that you don't punch in, police officers can debunk that. Well, you snuck out for a drink. 10 minutes to commit the crime, came back. So alibis, they're tough. So back to the crime scene, what it tells me. The crime scene assessment. These boys were beaten. They weren't stabbed. They were beaten to death. All three of them. Now, the autopsy will say that 2 of them died as a result of drowning, which means they were hog-tied and placed in that ditch alive, that their lungs filled with water and they drowned. One of them bled out. The boy that had his penis cut supposedly bled out, or he died before being placed in there. You can't tell how he died. Blunt force trauma, yes, you can tell that. But what I'm saying is he was placed in there. He didn't have any water in his lungs. Therefore, he did not drown like the other 2. I can't overemphasize enough how much rage was involved in this killing. Those boys endured so much, so quickly, so violently, they could not defend themselves. It's just basically impossible. They were hog-tied, like I said, with their own shoelaces. What does that tell you? I'm going to give you guys a second. Shout it out at me. Yes, you got it. No, you're wrong. Unplanned. Okay, this was an unplanned event. How do I know that? Well, if it was planned, you bring your own bindings, right? If you're a serial killer and you're out looking for a victim, you would bring your own bindings. Or you would, if you had a knife or a gun, you would certainly use it. But that's not the case. They were beaten. You have to understand why does a child become a victim? Sexual gratification is usually number 1. Abuse is number 2. Could this be that? Sure, because it does have sexual undertones, right? They're stripped naked. The boy's penis appears to be cut off. Well, I think that can be debunked, and that is also going to be... So let's remove that out of the equation. That was animals as well. That was turtles. People have got to understand that any predatory animal will go for soft skin first. The scrotum, the penis skin, that is easy pulling to rip off to eat. I believe that is what happened. He may have been stabbed or cut there for whatever reason, because any place that's bleeding is something else that's going to attract the turtles, fish, crawfish, whatever else is in there. So still, sexual undertones. I can't get away from that, right? Because they're naked. What do the knots tell me? I said I'd get back to this. Let me go to my page on knots. The Moore boy. The left side, the binding on his left wrist and his left ankle. Square knots. Right side. 3 half hitch and 4 half hitch. Stevie Branch. His left side, 3 half hitches. Right side, 1 hitch. Chris, all the same, 2 half hitches. What do those knots mean? You don't need to know what they mean other than they're different. And what does that tell you? Thank you. More than one offender. I watched something with my colleague Jim Clemente start to do a bit of an assessment on this, and he immediately looked at the wounds and said the wounds are the same. Therefore, initially it looks like one offender. I think that's a very dangerous assessment to make. And I've seen that before on the FBI doing it on one of my cases a while ago. They said one offender based off of the wounds. It's kind of misleading. Basically what they're saying is, hey, let's say you have two victims. One is stabbed and the other is shot. The assessment may tell you from the FBI or anybody else, but right now I'm talking about the FBI's assessments. They may tell you you have two offenders. That's not necessarily true. What if Richard Ramirez comes into a house, he has carrying a gun and a knife, the gun is to control, the knife is to kill. The husband comes out, he starts to put up a fight right away, you're not getting in here, boom, boom, shoot him, go in, rape the wife, cut her throat. So now you have one offender for two victims killed in two different manners. So you have to be, I have a lot of respect for Jim Clemente, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying, and I just saw a brief snippet of him asking that. I don't know what his full assessment was, so, I'm just saying as an example, you got to be careful with that. So these knots, you have at least 3 different knots. 1, 2, could be 4, but certainly more than 1. So there's definitely more than one offender. So now we can start deducing, right? The one boy, it appears, and I believe it was Chris Byers, he did not have abrasions and contusions on his wrists where the bindings were as much as the other 2 boys did. So what does that tell you? It tells me he was unconscious, more than likely. I can't say 100% when those bindings were placed. Why can't I say that 100%? Because I could say he's unconscious or he was not fighting. So maybe he complied. That's possible. You can't say 100% that he was unconscious. Okay? He could have complied. He could have got hit and complied. Could have got killed, could have been knocked unconscious. Then the other 2 would have struggled, of course, if they were trying to bind him, if they seen what happened to the first boy. Those knots kind of tell me, this is hard to say because I don't like saying things unless I can back it up with fact. I don't like hunches. But with Chris Byers, the boy having all the same 2 half hitch knots, okay? All the knots are the same on Byers. That tells me that he was tied up by one person. That tells me that person is the leader. Okay, we deduced that it's more than one. So it's a group now, or at least 2. This guy, whoever tied up Chris, is the alpha male. Now that fits Damien, right? We know that from Suspectology. We know that Jason would follow Damien. We know Jesse, according to his own statements, was scared of Damien. So this matches that. It appears to me that it's possible that Chris would have been attacked first, for whatever reason, stripped. Now, why would they strip the boys? It's my belief that it has nothing to do for sexual purposes. It's my belief that they were stripped to embarrass him. So Chris is hit, struck first, stripped down. He's made an example of, kinda, right there. The other 2, however it happens, the same fate is dealt with them. However, the leader is not doing that. He's done one. And we know he's done one by the knots being all the same. You look at the other boys, the knots are different. They're all over the place. To me, that's a leader telling them, do the same. Tie them up. Okay? That's what I deduce from that. Could I be wrong? Of course I can. But I feel pretty confident in this. So who would do this? And why? Well, I find it interesting that the boys hung out with another kid whose name was Aaron. I think it was Aaron Hutchinson. And this boy said, we had a clubhouse in those woods. And we would go there to play. But while we were there sometimes, there was some boys, some men that would come into the woods, and they would have sex. Now, he's an 8-year-old. I don't believe he stated sex, but he kind of demonstrated by saying the one boy would kind of bend over and there'd be another one behind him. He said they would lick each other, which I took to mean probably oral sex. He talked about seeing them roll up green vegetable stuff and put it in a white thing, marijuana, smoking a joint. And he said that they would spy on them. Now that struck me because I am trying to come up with a motive as to why these boys would be beaten, especially if it's not sexual. Remember, we ruled out sexual overtones because the penis being cut off is no longer relevant if it's an animal bite. I did say that them being naked could possibly be sexual overtones. But now, when I look at everything, I'm saying they're stripped naked to embarrass them. So, I start wondering, did these boys see something that they shouldn't have saw? Could they have seen sexual activity? And according to the boy's statement, they were men. So did he see homosexual activity that would have embarrassed the offender if that word got out? I think that that's possible. But would it be a stranger? No, it would not be. And the reason being is because these boys see strangers having sex, doing whatever in the woods. Who are they going to... They can't identify any of them. But if it's somebody that they know, now we have a problem. So I think that more than likely, those boys went out to those woods to do what they always did. Play. Maybe specifically spy. Let me give you an example. I had a friend named Paul Kubalak, who I always went to his house all the time. Every time that I would go there for a period of a month, it seems, first thing we did, we'd grab BB guns, we'd go hide in the woods, and we'd shoot cars going by. All the time. That's what we did. We got caught, and we got punished accordingly. But it was like we were that age, 12. They were 8, but maybe we were 10, 11, 12. It was something that we did. We played and had fun, but we went and did that little mischievous thing. this could be very relatable to that. They went out there specifically to spy on, obviously it had happened before. So what can we deduce? We now said it's more than one offender. It's at least two. They were in a group. One of the two knew one of the boys, probably knew him well, as it was a relative. That offender, so we've narrowed down this pool from the entire United States of America to Arkansas to West Memphis to his family. And we can narrow it down further and say it's a male member of one of their families. Could be dad, stepdad, cousin, brother, older brother, something like that. I would start looking at the group of people. I want to know the offender more than likely has a violent history. Okay? This isn't the first time that he's beaten somebody, whether it's an adult or whether it's a kid. He has no issue with it. I think he will present himself one way in public and a completely different way once those doors are closed. And by that, I think when he's outside, he would characterize himself as a good man, a good, hardworking person, abides by the law, don't do any drugs, but the people around him know differently. And when he is behind closed doors, he's a completely different person. That's the type of person I think was the leader in this group. I think that points away from Damien Echols. I think he is the same way inside and outside. He's the same person. The person that did this, I don't believe that to be the case. I don't have anything other to say about the other person that was in the group or the other two people that were in the group. I would say that they were followers of this leader, whoever this leader is. I think we've deduced that the leader more than likely is a family member of one of those individuals. Now, people say, how can you say that? Had to be a stranger. Had to be a serial killer. When you start looking and deducing possibilities to probabilities, I mean, you can weed that out. And I just went through why I believe it's a family member, a male family member. He's probably gone to all the court hearings, is supportive, all this and that. I don't know. One name that did pop up during some of my research was Terry Hobbs. Some people commented some stuff. I didn't jump on the Terry Hobbs bandwagon because I don't know anything about him. So I didn't research him other than seeing one of the clips of him holding his wife, Pam, when she passed out when she learned that her son was murdered. But I would look at his background, okay? All of them. All the stepfathers' backgrounds. Now, I'm just trying to think here if... I mean, I already said there's no doubt that the offender would have a violent history. He would have no problem beating kids. Just don't know about... I guess I don't have enough information to go on for the sexual abuse to say that the offender would be a sexual abuser. I can't say that. I don't have enough information on it. But this guy, whoever it is, I believe is a family member, is a leader. And by a leader, I just mean people listen to him. Just like Damien was. People listened to him. At least Jesse did and Jason Baldwin did. Whoever this main offender is, and remember, it's the main offender. He did the first assault on Chris Byers. And why? Why did it happen? Like I said, it was probably they saw something. They were spying. They saw something, whatever it was. But I don't believe that was the main reason. Okay, they saw something, but it appears to me that it was probably, I could envision through victimology, I believe it was Chris who, one of the boys was very defiant. Okay, it wouldn't surprise me now to know that it would probably be Chris Byers. Was very defiant, and I could see the leader of this group of offenders saying, you know, come here. I see you spying on me or whatever. And the boys try to run, or they listen and they come or whatever. And this guy, this offender, being very forceful, and you know, I'll kick your little goddamn ass if you ever tell anybody. And I could see maybe it was Chris Byers saying, you know, piss off. Because one of the boys, a witness had said that just previous to these murders, she had told them to get home. What are you doing out riding bikes this late, or whatever it was, get home. And he said, I don't have to listen to you. See what I mean? Like that defiance. And I can see one of those boys doing that to this offender, saying, whatever, I don't have to listen to you. Piss off, old man. And that made him snap, just like that. And he punches him. And that starts it, you know? Punches him. He goes unconscious, maybe starts wailing on him, picks up a stick. Oh yeah, I'm going to teach you, you little bastard. And starts hitting him. Strips off his clothes. And it starts. I can envision that. Takes his shoelaces off, his shoes off, ties them up, tells the other two, see that? That's what's going to happen to you. Get him. And that leader tells them that. Now, initially when I started looking at this case, I was of the single offender mindset, because it just appeared to me that it would be a single offender who could easily control boys. Now you say to yourself, how can that be? Well, listen, the BTK killer in his first murders, the O'Terrys, he controlled an entire family by himself. End up killing them all. Hanging the little daughter on a water pipe down in the basement, strangling the father, putting bags over his head, all that. He did it all himself. So when people tell you that they could not, it had to be more than one, because they couldn't control three, that's false. History has proven this. All it takes is a gun or a knife. That's all it takes to get people to comply. But initially, like I said, I thought it was one offender until I looked at the knots. The knots is what changed the whole dynamics of this. One offender is going to make the same knots on every individual. You're not going to change those knots up. You know, you're just not. Pun. You're just not. So anyhow, that's what I believe, you know, listen, I've seen that there was a million websites, a million videos on this, and I didn't go down that rabbit hole. I didn't want to. I want to look at all these cases as an unbiased type of analysis. You can't be biased. You have so many people that would say that Damien and them are guilty, and they'll bring you reasons as to why. Other people will say, you know, Bojangles man, this black man that that very night of these murders was found in a female restroom at Bojangles restaurant, all bloody. Had his arm in a splint. You know, when I saw that, I thought about it. But again, when you start deducing, you're looking at the crime scene, you start deducing things, you can rule things out. To me, he's completely ruled out because he was a stranger, and I don't believe these kids were killed by a stranger. You'll have, I've seen a lot of things on Terry Hobbs, being people believing that he was guilty, another stepfather, and I should have clicked on all of them and looked at them, because the buyer's stepfather as well, people saying he's guilty. I should have researched that to find out, but again, I didn't want to jump on that bandwagon. But they're probably on the right path, because I think it is a family member, a male family member, older, probably above 20 years old at the time of the crime. If he was below 20, you know, he would be like 18, maybe 17, but he'd have to have masculine qualities about him where people would follow him. People would have to be scared of him. And I doubt that. Probably an adult male, a little bit older than that. I don't know what else to say. Let me go back to some of the notes that I have written down that stuck out to me. The knife, I have a star next to that. It says the knife that was found was not used. I already went over that. I believe that. And this is important. I had somebody comment on one of my things when I said in one of my videos that I was not strictly pro law enforcement. And she went and she said, "What do you mean by that?" And I had another guy say that I was, of course I'm going to say that way, I'm a cop. I'm not a cop. You know, a cop was my profession at one time, you know. What I mean by me not being pro law enforcement is when it comes to this, detective work, investigations, analysis, it's not about the prosecution and it's not about the defense. It's about the truth. Remember that. It's not about the prosecution. It's not about the defense. It's about the truth. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. So that's what I mean when I say I'm not pro law enforcement. I'm not against law enforcement, especially when they do their investigations the right and correct way. I'm all for it. I said that in the Chris Watts case that I looked at. I thought Tammy Lee, see, I remembered her name this time. Before, I was like, well, whoever the girl was, and somebody was like, you don't call her girl. Her name's Tammy Lee. So Tammy Lee, I thought she did a fantastic job. Other cases, such as this one, but there's been more egregious cases than this one where I thought police did a horrible freaking job. One of them is that French camp case that I did. Phyllis Carson. I don't even want to get into that. But that's what I mean by saying I'm not pro law enforcement. I respect law enforcement, but I respect defense attorneys just as much. But what I respect more than anything is the truth. That is what I respect the most. I don't care if the truth sets Damian Eccles to jail. I don't care if the truth sets him free. The truth is the truth, and that's what you work for in investigations. So that's what I mean by that. I have written down here the medical examiner did a bad job. Well, I think that he did, okay? He knows, I think, more than me when it comes to medical work, and I just feel that he did a bad job, especially with that knife. If the offender had a knife, he would have stabbed them. There's no evidence of stab wounds. Okay? How? Plain and simple. I have written down here about John Douglas. So John Douglas, I guess, was called in at some point in time, and he originally thought it was a lust murder because he thought that there was bite marks on the victims. And he came to find out that they were animal marks, and he changed this to a personal cause homicide, which I think kind of ties into what I believe as well. So, again, the boys, I believe, were stripped down because I couldn't get that. Why strip them down and then hog time? They weren't hog tied first, right? They couldn't be because you couldn't get their clothes off if they're already hog tied. So you strip them first and then you hog tie them. Some will say that you could do that to control their movement. I don't believe so. They're 8 years old. If you can't control an 8-year-old by putting them in a headlock, then you have an issue. So I think it was done more of an embarrassing type of thing. Personal cause. Yeah, I would buy into John Douglas's assessment of that. Not satanic at all. No satanic. There's nothing. There was nothing there that I saw had any satanic ritual or overtones to it. None whatsoever. I don't know how they came up with that. I'm baffled. I really am. I saw nothing. The hair and the ligature, I talked about that. I read a quote or saw a quote in that film. I think it was that said, the sheriff said something that Terry Hobbs, it was not a suspect in 93 and he's not in 2007. I think that's a mistake. I think he should be a suspect. I mean, right off the bat, he should be looked into. I don't know whether he should be a suspect or not. I shouldn't say that. I'd want to look into his background a little bit further and find out more about him. Let me tell you something. If he worked in a field that, I don't want to speculate on that either. But I would want to know whether he was that type of person, as well, where behind closed doors he was somebody else, if he had a violent history. So there's got to be something to that. I think that this might, I got written down there, Jason Baldwin, respect. Ha. He states it's in the state's best interest. So that, I thought that was amusing. I mean, there's so much with this case that I think I could certainly go down rabbit holes for months or years. But it definitely warrants a follow-up. I think maybe what I'll do is look up for, there's got to be a group of people, at least two, possibly 3 or 4, that hung out together in those woods, did illegal activities there, smoking marijuana at least, possibly engaging in some sort of sexual act. It had to be something that, if these boys were spying on these guys, it had to be something that made those boys curious and wanting to see more. You know what I mean by that? Like, not that, we saw it once, and now we're good. No, it's something that kept bringing them back to spy. That's why I say sexual activity. I don't think them smoking what they could construe as cigarettes, I don't see that as being a factor of bringing them back to spy some more. Sexuality, seeing that, whether it's male, 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 female, that would bring an 8-year-old boy back to spy on. That's why I say that. If I do a follow-up video on this, I will research a little bit more on Terry Hobbs, John Byers, the Moore boy's father. I want to know whether they'd have siblings that are older than 16, that if they would go out to those woods. See if I got everything. Yeah, I think I got everything here. I haven't annotated here. The boys were stripped to embarrass them, and that shows familiarity. Okay? So I already went through that. I don't believe a stranger would strip them to embarrass them. I believe it would be somebody that they know. More than one person. I have here, could have been one, and then I have an arrow going down, and I said, but we've already deduced, because of the knots, that it was more than one. I have down here a violent history with adults and kids. One leader, and I deduced that through the knots on Chris Byers. It was a leader of the group, and I said it matches Damien, but then I have an arrow down. I deduced it more than likely wasn't him. I have here, they saw something, drugs/sex. Chris Byers did not have abrasions like the other two on his wrists. No defensive wounds, and I already went through that, right? That it's possibly that he was unconscious or complying. That's it. Okay. I mean, that's a pretty quick assessment. I know this is over an hour, but it's actually pretty quick for the amount of stuff that's out there. Do I think Damien Eccles, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miss Kelly should have ever been arrested? No, I do not. Just not enough evidence there. Whether they did it or not, they should not have been arrested on the evidence that was there, or lack thereof evidence, because there really was none. Did they do it? I'm not here to say whether they did or didn't, but I would say that through my assessment, it would certainly point me away from them for sure, and it would be somebody close to one of the boys, more than likely a family member, as the leader of the group. And that's important. If there's 3 individuals there, and one of them is related somehow, a male, to one of the boys, he is not going to be the follower. He's going to be the aggressor. He's going to be the one that's calling the shots. So that's important to know. I think that's it. Trying to think if there's anything else that I want to go over. I think I'm going to do an update on this. This has sucked me in pretty good. Those pictures of those boys in the beginning of that documentary getting pulled out of that creek. Oh my God. That was chilling. It was horrible because they were playing one of my favorite bands, Metallica, over top of it. So it was a catch-22 because I liked the music, but I didn't like the visual. But again, Joe Berlinger, he was the producer of Some Kind of Monster about Metallica. And I've met Berlinger. Again, this is nothing new. I've talked about him in some of my other videos, so I'm going to do a follow-up video to this and start looking at the boys' family members a little bit. I'm sure probably somebody already, I guarantee it's been done. Obviously, there was stuff on Terry Hobbs and Byers and more out there. I would like to know, out of curiosity. People were commenting on my thing that Terry Hobbs is guilty as hell, so I should look into why. But again, I didn't want to because I didn't want to be biased. It's very important when you do these, not to, you don't want to know any suspects. And I tell people this all the time. If you're asking me, if you're a family member and you're asking me for your help, don't send me an email that says, well, her boyfriend is guilty as hell. We don't like him. We know he did it and he's getting away with murder. I don't want to know that. Just give me your information. I'll make the determination. I don't want bias being brought in at all. And that's the reason I didn't look at any of these things other than Damien and Jason and Jesse. I mean, I was watching the documentary and it was certainly skewed one way. So, I mean, I didn't have a choice on that. But, okay, West Memphis 3. That's my thoughts. So much more that I could look onto in this case. But, again, I just want to stick to the basics. I don't want to start going down rabbit holes and having this and having that. This is what I think more than likely took place. And you can enjoy it. You can listen to it. You can learn from it. Or you can hate it, you know. And I would just want to say, hey, thanks to all those members that have not only subscribed to the channel. I mean, we went from 1,000 8 months ago to 22,000 this morning, which is unbelievable. But also the paying members, the monthly subscription. Oh, man, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I mean, I just keep throwing out content to you guys like crazy if I can and doing whatever I can. You know, I appreciate that support. So for all you members, you know, I wish I had a list here. And I'm sorry, I'm not good with shout outs. I'm not a shout out type of guy. But I always say when I'm going to do a video, I'm going to have to acknowledge these people. And I always forget, and I apologize for that. But I certainly appreciate it. And I'm going to be doing a live show with you guys in the near future. And if you haven't subscribed, go subscribe. I mean, hit the subscribe bell notification. I don't give a shit. I've told you that before. I don't care whether you subscribe, whether you like, whether you hate. If you love it, I love you back. But, you know, all this subscribe and notification bullshit, I don't get into that. I make the content, I do the assessments, I put it out there, and hopefully you enjoy it. Okay? That's all I can do. Thank you for your support. For those of you support, those of you that don't like can piss off. That's just the way it is. But till next time, Maine's out.